Sylvia and me.
Sylvia and
Sylvia and me. Sylvia and
Sylvia.
Sylvia
and
and Sylvia and Sylvia.
Hello, my name is Jessica Murphy. I teach and write about the history and culture of fragrance, and it's my pleasure to be here at Sylvia and Me.
Jessica, thank you so much and welcome. Scent, perfume. You actually have a website called Perfume Professor. Women wear perfume, men wear cologne, but I believe, and I could be wrong, that, women and perfume and scent goes back a long way. It could really identify who a woman is. When I think of perfume these days, of course, the top one is Chanel, at least to me, Chanel #5. And they have the most fantastic commercials. So you're a blogger, you're a historian, you're a professor. You also work at the Brooklyn Museum, which I do want to get into in a little bit, only because there's one exhibit that you're doing, that you've worked on, which brings back memories for me. But can you kind of go into maybe a little bit of the history of scent and perfume?
Of course, I like to say that it's a very universal experience and it's an incredibly personal experience at the same time. And what do I mean by that? People have been making perfume, aromatics of different kinds, whether it was incense or perfumed oils or perfumed lotions or what we now think of as perfume that you spray or dab on. People have been making perfume for about 4,000 years, starting in Mesopotamia and then extending that skill geographically eastward through Asia and westward through Europe. So this is something that people have done in pretty much every corner of the world for about 4 millennia, and that people are still doing today. It's an ancient form of creativity.
Can I ask you, could you tell us why it even started? Because usually something starts because there's a need. Did somebody just say, touch something, go, wow, that smells good, I want to smell like that?
We think the first uses were primarily religious, and the creation of incense, of solid substances that you would burn that then would turn into airborne aromas or smells. We think those were the first uses, and we think they were mostly religious or spiritual, that they were intended as offerings to gods or ancestors or other kinds of beings that were seen as existing sort of above or beyond our reality. So these substances that burned and then turned into smoke were a way of reaching or communicating people in the afterlife or the heavens or whatever your particular belief system was. And then the use of aromatic substances that were put on the body also had early religious uses. If you think of ancient Egypt and mummies, there was a very elaborate, very technically sophisticated system of embalming and burying humans, especially if they were the upper classes. They had very elaborate funerals, and the bodies were scented and embalmed. That was partly to help preserve them, but partly, again, to make them very special and worthy of entering the afterlife. Because aromatic substances, for a long, long time, were really costly and hard to find. So if you're using certain spices and flowers and even certain types of tree wood, they were things that people had had to travel to source and bring back. So they were precious substances. They were rare and costly. And they were used for special things, which was often religion, or if you were of the upper classes in the ancient Near East or ancient Egypt, for self-adornment, for festivals, possibly for seduction, possibly to enhance and prolong your beauty.
Okay, so for enhancing your beauty, that's really, and seduction, those are two things that we think of nowadays as far as why perfume. Yet it's very, very personal. So when did it really become something that the general public started even, thinking about? Because if you look at the top brands, if everyone were to put it on, one would think everyone would smell the same, and a lot of them are so expensive. So how did this become a commercial item that people could actually want to go out and purchase?
That is an excellent question. This is one of the things I love to read about and talk about, because the history I know is primarily the history of Western perfumery. And in Europe, perfume was really something that was available primarily to aristocracy and the upper classes for centuries. So long after ancient Egypt, it was really something you had to have a lot of money to buy in small amounts. And then a lot happens in the mid to later 1800s. And I love perfume because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Perfume is tied into history in so many different ways, into the history of trade and economics, into the history of religion, the history of technology, the history of how we think about gender and style. All these different issues are lenses that you can use to think about perfume. So in the let's say the mid 1800s, the Industrial Revolution occurs, and this changes many fields, but it does change perfume in a few ways. First, there's the development of synthetic ingredients or perfume, aroma chemicals. And up to that point, all perfume is natural perfume. And I know over the past 20 years or so, there's been a real interest in natural perfumery, but all perfume was natural until these synthetics were developed in labs in around the 1870s and onwards. And synthetics are more shelf stable, they're more consistent, you can make them in greater volume and store them. You're not worrying about what this year's crop of jasmine was like. So more perfume could be produced more cheaply than ever before. And that changed, what this was in terms of consumerism. And then you have things like trains that are able to ship goods further and faster than ever before. There are improvements in glass making, so you can have different kinds of bottles and make them faster and cheaper, just like the perfumes. So all these different historical and technological notes come together to make perfume something that's more within the grasp of this expanding demographic, the middle class, who are living closer and closer to cities where there are more and more stores, department stores. So there are even more places to buy perfume. You have illustrations coming into newspapers and magazines that perfumes can be advertised more visually. And it's kind of a perfect storm for getting more people curious about something that they can afford, which they wouldn't have been able to 100 years prior.
So when we talk perfume, and we call it scent, we can call it perfume, because I think scent to me is a little bit different. Yes, perfume of course has a scent, but then so does some types of wood, flowers, and so on. So we're going to stick with perfume right now, and then we'll delve into scent. When we think of perfume, we really think about women, not so much men right now, and yet men use aftershave, lotion, and so on. So was this at the beginning? I know you talked about for religious reasons, and then, it kind of moved on. But was this mainly the majority of people using this women, and then did it kind of migrate to men realizing, well, wait a minute, why should they smell so good?
Actually, it was almost the reverse. Both genders were wearing perfume often. The people who could afford it, men and women, were wearing perfume almost equally for a really long time. And just like all perfume was natural, all perfume for a very long time was really gender free. And I know there's also an interest lately in like gender neutral perfume or unisex perfume, but for a very long time, those definitions didn't exist. And at different times and places, you'll see men wearing violet, or you'll see women wearing very strong musk, and things that we might not expect in the 20th or 21st century. But those are cultural tastes, and they shift over time. So for a long time, men were wearing fragrance just as often as women.
You can find us on all of your popular podcast platforms. And of course, our website, sylviame.com. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned. Want to hear more of my conversation with Jessica? Find Sylvia and me wherever you listen
to your favorite podcasts.